These boys who gave up their lives to try to save the house.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Sorry for a little bit of delay.
Good morning.
Okay, there we go. Good morning, Simeon. How are you? Okay.
Thanks God. How you doing?
He's running around on my kids.
Good.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So let's put this over here. I'm sorry, I was having trouble connecting from the Wi-Fi in the shul, so I'm just doing it from my phone. The self hour. Okay. So last week when we left off, we were just in a ridiculous setup of a person who is stuck on the road before Shabbat starts, and he ends up with a solution of he has a wallet with him, and the question is, how does he get the wallet to go to his somewhere where he'll be safe? And all he has with him is this animal, the donkey. And so then we said that he has the shtick where he puts after the donkey starts walking, he puts the wallet on the back of the donkey. When the donkey stops, he takes it off, and he continues the cycle until they get to a place where he could then safely leave his wallet, and there's no issue here. So that's what we said last time, and we acknowledged, even the Mishnah Berurah acknowledged at a certain point, there's only so much you can do here until some things start to go wrong for you. So the last thing we left off was in the Shulchan Aruch, where it says V'yesh Om, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so it's on top of Mem Aleph, first line. So he writes here, V'yesh Om shetzarich lizaher. There are those that say, not everyone necessarily agrees with this, but there are those that say, shetzarich lizar mi lahanhiga b'kol ram kol zman shakis aleh. That if there are those that say, the Rambam, that you need to be cautious from leading the animal. And sometimes you just lead the animal b'kol ram, with your voice. Certain animals, for sure, we know can be trained to listen to your whatever your call is, whatever. But also sometimes the animals respond to whatever noise you make. You scream at the animal, whatever, and move, whatever it is. It may, exactly startle the animal. You make a noise, and you know that they're going to move as a result of it. So you should be careful not to do this. Kol zman shehakis aleha, when the wallet is on it. But that does open the door up to an interesting idea. So what happens? Sometimes the animal is going to stop. It needs to take a break. It needs to whatever. Actually, we're going to see later that the Mishnah Berurah describes that the donkey has to relieve itself, and so it needs to stop and relieve itself, and then it will continue. But okay, it relieved itself, so now it's stopped. So it's not doing anything. So if you at that point, Bester, you're supposed to take the wallet off, right? So now there's nothing on the back of the donkey. So how do I know? Like, come on, let's go. So maybe then I actually could say, no, go. And then when the animal goes, I put the thing on. So I didn't, when I was leading it, it didn't have anything on its back. And so you're trying to, again, avoid these two problems of driving the animal or leading it, being manhig the animal, and you're trying to avoid shvisas behema. Shvisas behemta, the animal does work, which would require it to violate a malacha the same way that we violate a malacha, which is that for carrying, there needs to be an akira and a hanacha, and a lifting up, an uprooting of the item, and then a placing it down. And if the animal is already in motion, then that's not the akira. The animal never sort of took the item from a position of rest and then began to move it.
So can you call
around a big loud? Yes. I think the point here is that that any. Right, I don't think it makes a difference. The kol ram is probably I would say dibra shulchan aruch keneged whatever what's dibra Torah keneged what is that? What's the expression they go on now? Like I need to learn more. Dibra Torah keneged basically speaking in the normal case. The normal case when you're talking about an animal, you talk loudly to the animal. You usually don't say you don't whisper to the donkey to move. Right. I don't think that would be a problem here.
So the issue is not to do that while the animal carries something.
Exactly. When it's nothing there, so you can tell the animal move, because the idea is here telling the animal is when the animal's pulling things, and whether it's you or items, you're not supposed to be manhig the animal. Okay, so now let's go take a look here.
Right.
Yes, Simeon, go ahead.
I see that as the classic midrabanon shinui. How you're treating the animal and the carriage on the animal from what you would do, let's say, by uvda dechol.
You're saying that this is the sort of the normal way of. I mean, that we have to be careful not to do it the normal way.
Yeah, that's the only thing, because otherwise it makes no sense whatsoever.
Got it. I mean, look, he's trying here. Again, they're trying to minimize the problems here, and in some ways, this is actually a very helpful statement here. This actually opens the door to, if I do want to use my voice to move the animal, so I just need to be cautious to not. It shouldn't be carrying anything on, while I do that. Meaning that should be the part when the animal is not carrying something. So it's just something to be cautious for. We're trying to minimize the isurim here. So here we have an opportunity to, when there's no load on the back of the animal, you have an extra tool at your disposal of using your voice. But when it's carrying something, don't say, okay, turn right, turn left. Leave that to Siri. Okay, she'll take care of that part. Okay. The Rama adds in here one phrase to this last part. No matter what, here you shouldn't be riding the donkey. Rather, you're walking along with the donkey. That's it. You shouldn't be riding the donkey. You're walking with the donkey. Now that makes sense. We'll challenge that a little bit, but that does make sense, because then the animal you're literally, he's carrying you. You're leading the animal. Usually when you're riding an animal, you don't just sit there. You're probably holding on to whatever the reins, and so it's not such a good idea. In this situation, you should walk. Now, the imhu tzarich lotzei chutz latchum mibnei shemisyarem min halistim ushar sakana. And if, let's say, there's some need, this hits too close to home this year, but people who were on exactly with Shabbos when October 7th attacked, it was also Yom Tov too. But if one of the ways to survive when they're listed, they're bandits, they're bad guys, you need to go chutz latchum. Do whatever you got to do. I mean, it's saving your life. If this is a potential sakana, then you need to go. You could also have another sakana where it's like somebody needs to get to somebody needs to get medical attention. You have to run chutz latchum to get the medical attention. You go, because life is more important than Shabbos. So you could do that, no problem. You have to go outside the tchum, and here we're talking about even with the animal, I assume. Or else say you were inside the tchum, and you have an animal with you. So you're in a tchum, but you're not yet at your house. You could be inside a tchum, and it could be a lengthy walk to get back to your house. There's no problem if you're in danger. You got to get to the hospital. You got to run away from the bad guys. Then you can sit on the donkey and ride. You don't need to be dafka walking. Oh, well, it's Shabbos. In some ways, when I was preparing this, what's Rama talking about? Is this obvious? Pashut enough is this sakana? You do whatever you got to do. You ride the donkey. You run with the donkey. What's he trying to say? Look, and I think that I had to remind myself that there's a machlokas when we get to it. It'll take some time to get to this. It's Shin Chafei, if I'm not mistaken. I remember back from my days of learning at YU, that the Shulchan Aruch and Rama have an argument about what do you do pikuach nefesh on Shabbos. Everyone agrees, of course, you can break Shabbos for pikuach nefesh, but there's a slight machlokas about how you do it. Shulchan Aruch said it relates to actually a machlokas that appears in the first parak of Maseches Yoma, that whether or not a korban tzibor is hutra duchuya, meaning, I'll just back up and I'll leave it at that context. Do you say that if the majority of the Jewish people are in a state of Toma, and to bring, let's say, the Korban Pesach, or not Korban Pesach, Korban Tzibor, I think it's a Korban Tzibor, the community has to be, I mean, it's Korban Pesach. The question is, if the majority of people are Tameh, and you can't do a Korban Pesach if you're Tameh, so maybe there's actually no obligation on behalf of the community to do it. But there's a whole discussion about, well, but if everybody is Tameh, maybe it's a question of so I don't want to get the whole sugya. You see, I'm going to go down to a rabbit hole here. But the question comes down to, is something when there's a dire circumstance, is the permission to do something hutra, meaning it's all good. It's hutra. It's like in the circumstance of I'll use another example the Gemara gives. Let's say you have a patient in the hospital. Can I feed them a non-kosher food? According to one opinion, go ahead. Person's in sakana, the danger, throw down with their throw whatever you can. One approach is that it's hutra. It's not Shabbos anymore. It's not the laws of kashrus are suspended completely, 100%. Or do you say something is dechuya? No, you could push off the laws, but the laws are still there. So that to the extent that I can continue to keep those laws, while of course saving a life, do it. That's why if you'll ask me a question about okay, I go to the hospital on Shabbos, wife goes into labor. How do I get to the hospital on Shabbos? I'll tell you, first thing you should try to do, if it's possible. Of course, if there's no opportunity for this, then do what you have to do. But often labor comes on, first you start to feel contractions. I'm not sure. You call the doctor. I think I'm having, should I come in? Yes, come in. Okay, you're not in a circumstance where the baby's coming out. And if you're going to a hospital like White Plains Hospital, where you're 10 minutes away, so what should you do better? What's better to do? Take an Uber. Better than driving yourself, right? It's a lower level. So to Rabbanan as opposed to Doraisa. So you're trying to do things, the least breaking of Shabbos that you have to do. The Shulchan Aruch will say, once Shabbos is in a situation where I have to break it, who cares? Break it however you want. Drive yourself. But the Ramah has his position in Shulchan Aruch. He quotes that, no, you should do it to Chuya. Only do what you need to do to break Shabbos. You could break Shabbos, but do what you need to do. Now, if you're in a circumstance where there's no Ubers, there's no cabs, or it's dachuf, you have to get right away to the hospital, you go. Or again, if you're being attacked, we shouldn't know of such things. In that situation, everything's off the table. When you're trying to survive and there's some threat, you're not making calculations. Well, but if I take an Uber away from the threat, no, you're getting away from the threat. So here, yeah,
Good question.
yeah.
Why is an Uber better than driving? I mean, you have to do all.
Because the non-Jew has to drive, not the non-Jew has to.
You have to call.
All those things on your phone. I'm going to cover the microphone here, so all the children who are listening at one point. But those are all derabbanans. You driving is a doraisa. Paying using transactions on Shabbos is a derabbanan. The asking an Andrew to do all these things, derabbanan. Everything that you're going to do with an Uber is derabbanan.
A phone call is derabbanan.
Yeah, it's not a doraisa. There's no malacha that's being violated. And by the way, if it was an Uber, by the way, you're just touching the app. It's an LED touchscreen. Again, cell phone usage is strictly 100% prohibited on Shabbos. I don't want anyone to watch this shit and be like, well, the rabbi in Scarsdale said it's mutter to use a cell phone. It is not okay to use a cell phone. If you need to violate Shabbos, that's a better way than to drive yourself. Because driving yourself involves turning the engine on, which involves literally creating sparks. And that's 100% the doraisa. Not even a question that's the doraisa. Whereas if a non-Jew, and you're going to say, but what if I get the Uber driver who's a Jew? The statistics will show you that I've taken Uber a number of times. I've never had a Jewish driver. That's not to say it couldn't happen, but and you have no obligation to ask, by the way, are you Jewish or not Jewish? You can assume al pi rov that the majority of Uber drivers are not Jewish.
Not anymore.
There
used to be cab drivers who were Jewish.
Yeah.
First time I arrived in the driver was speaking Yiddish.
Right. So today, yeah. All right, we'll go with today.
Yeah.
Right. So exactly. So you know what? It's better to if you can. Anyway, so so that's why I think he brings this up. Of course, what's he thinking about? He's thinking, look, if there's if there's a sakana, don't tell yourself you can't. You have to try to minimize. When you're talking about a misyara minalistim, you're talking about the bandits. Yeah, get on the donkey and go faster. Whatever's going to get you away from the danger. get moving. And I think he's trying to but I'm calculating here. So I think maybe on this one he's trying to say, don't calculate here when you're running away from listim. Know that you have this at your disposal. Maybe you're faster than a donkey. I don't know, but Yachol Leshev al Hachamor v'Lirkov, and he writes here in the Mishnah Berurah, by the way. Take a look. Sifkat on Yod. What's the whole fear here? That there's only a problem if you're in this tchum. There's no problem at all walking the donkey. As long as the donkey is not carrying anything, you can walk with your donkey. It's not a problem. And by the way, if there's an eruv and everything, I can carry something. The donkey can carry something. So you have a wallet. Wallet is a mukta issue still, but okay. So when you're so he's going to explain. Hold on, I'll get you. Don't worry. So but even though you're already in the only problem here is riding the donkey. So so here, okay, you'll ride the donkey. There's a danger. Now, even when you're outside the tchum, you can also ride the donkey. Now, what are you thinking here? What's the issue here? Because you know why? You're doing an isser anyways when you walk. Because when you're outside the tchum, every step you take, or maybe you could say maybe every dollar almost you take, but you are violating an isser. Now, there's a whole question: is it tchum del raisa, the rabbanon? There's maybe different measurements. The standard opinion is that if you are yud beis meal outside of a tchum, so you're literally in the middle of no man's land. Yud beis meal is a good distance out from the midrabanan. We say 2,000 amos. Midoraisa, you have yud beis meal, 12 meal. 18 minutes is I think 3/4 of a meal. Or no, a full meal is 18 minutes. We assume. So do the math. 12 times 8. You're walking that kind of a distance outside, so you're somewhere really far from from any civilization. If you are in that kind of situation, every step you take is a violation of Torah law. Now, they had those circumstances, undoubtedly, and we could have that too. Especially they traveled by foot or by donkey. You imagine you're traveling across the the desert in Bavel. Between Eretz Yisrael and Bavel, you're going through all the desert over there. There's nothing going on for miles and miles and miles and miles. So if you're in that circumstance, every step you take is already a violation.
I mean,
The vada
the thing is from where your community is. What is 2,000?
Yeah, so it's from the edge of from the edge of any community is. And when on Shabbos you are kona at tchum. When you're wherever you were when you started Shabbos, that's you're in that tchum of that location. If you're in the middle of nowhere, you acquire nothing. You acquire your dalet amos, basically. Your little space, and from there, anything that you walk, because there's no place of inhabitants there. You have nothing. So every step you're taking is a violation. The Rabbanan depends on how far you are from.
You said this
from
is the
a town.
location you decide. You're on the nowhere land, and this is
Then that's it. That's all you. Then you have nothing, basically.
Why don't you have the 2,000 amos?
You must trying to think. Do you get 2,000 amos when there's no dira there? There's no place to stay. The way you can extend an eruv, that's called an eruv tchum, and you can make an eruv tchum where you go 2,000 amos outside of your tchum. There's a little shack there. There's a little house there. You put some food in there. You make a bracha, and now you've extended your tchum in a particular direction, so you can now go even further. But that's all midrabanan.
For another 2,000 amma.
Correct.
What if the Rabbanan is less than?
No, that's midrabanan. That's all laws midrabanan. Midoraisa, if you're talking about yud beis meal, that's walking the equivalent of 18 times 12 minutes outside the city. What's 18 times 12? That's math is eluding me right now. But whatever. 300? Did I get that right? No, I don't know if I got it right. But it's far. Okay, if you do the math quickly, you'll do it. Yeah, you're talking about a long distance of walking. Yeah. Anyways, so bevada yuchal lirkov l'yinatel mehem. So if you're outside the schum and they're the bad guys are there, what's lost if you hop on the donkey? Any step you take is anyways a problem. So the donkey walking you riding the donkey is whatever. It's no difference, especially when there is a sakana. But I am based Yosef the Eshvar the Tovler Kov Shamni Leilech Baraglim. There's actually a svara to say that actually it's better to ride the donkey at that point than to walk. Why? Extra credit points for the person who gets this one.
Because the animal does the Hilchot Shabbat, not you.
But my animal doing Hilchot Shabbat is my problem. What's the what?
In the tomb.
In the tchum, you should walk yourself because unless there's a sakana, because then there's no
You're
issue.
not allowed to ride, but you can walk.
Yeah, exactly. So, but if I'm outside the tchum, why is it perhaps better? It's a great svara which ties the other halacha concept, which we'll learn about in Hilchot Shabbat. It's hachai noseh atzmo, that a living being carries that it carries itself. It's an interesting principle that if an animal or if a human being, let's say you have a child, and my kids are here right now, a child can walk themselves, but child, whatever, you pick the child up and you carry it. So there's a halachic principle, it's a fascinating principle that hachai noseh atzmo, that it's not called carrying midoraisa. Midorabanan you can't do it, but midoraisa you wouldn't violate because at the end of the day that creature, your child, could have walked itself. Achai knows it carries itself. An human being carries itself. I happen to be carrying. Okay, but the kid carries itself on. It stands upright. It moves. I picked it up, so I didn't give it the opportunity to use its legs. But otherwise, but this thing carries itself. What? But we don't extend hachai noseh atzmo to what? A child that's not walking yet. If you have a baby, we don't extend such a principle to hachai noseh atzmo. So here the Beis Yosef had an idea, and he wrote that maybe if you were in the situation where you're outside the tchum, maybe dafka better to hop on the back of the donkey because hachai noseh atzmo. Really, the donkey's not carrying me, so the donkey's not violating a doraisa, and I'm not walking. So I'm avoiding the whole issue of tchum here. So maybe it's actually slightly better if I hop on the back of the donkey at this point because halachically it works out better. At the end of the day, the Beis Yosef doesn't like it. He's like, I don't like my own argument here. So I ain't sham if you want to see the whole argument. But anyways, even if you hold of that, dafka le'inyan rechiva, we're just talking about riding. Why is riding a problem? Why can't I ride a horse on Shabbos? Let's say I live
because
I live where the farmers live, and it's quite a walk on Shabbos this morning. What's the sakana for? Why? Yes,
it was in last week's year.
Yes. What is it? Well, but that's not. But hachai noseh atzmo, Simeon, right? If I'm an adult, I can carry myself. The animal's not carrying me. Right? Even though it is carrying me, the halachic principle is that it's not carrying me. Mitzad halacha. Why? Because Richie said there's a gezerah, and by the way, let's say there's an eruv even, Simeon, so there's not a carrying issue. The animal can carry, I can carry. The issue is, it's a gezerah that I might snap a branch off a tree to use as a club or a whip on the animal. Because that's normally how if you ever watch any of these horse races, right? They take the jockeys, they're smacking that animal with the club.
It's called a crop. But midoraisa, we learned, it says, then this is a Torah mandate, that you have to give rest to your animal. So correct. Why are you twisting to find you just got through explaining that we should.
But the labor that's prohibited for the animal is exactly the same kinds of things that we can't do. So it has to violate a malacha. So the one that we've been discussing most in terms of the animal is hotzah, that the animal is carrying, bereshus harabim. If you're going for a walk with your donkey or with your dog, let's say, and there's no leash, and your dog just is trained well enough to know to walk next to you, and there's nothing there, there's no eruv, no nothing, it's okay. Your dog can come with you for a walk. It's walking next to you. It's and it's not carrying anything on its back. If your animal is carrying things, then it's an issue. And if it's carrying me, well, that's an interesting exception to the rule. Because of the principle of hachai noseh atzmo, that a living being carries itself, if it can, right, like a grown adult, then the animal is not violating midoraisa anything. because I could have carried myself, and the fact that I rode on the back of the animal is secondary. I mean, that's not secondary. It's not. It doesn't factor in, and therefore the animal, while it is doing work, undoubtedly, it's working harder by carrying me. I weigh a good deal. It's not violating a technical malacha, and that's the thing that an animal cannot do. My animal cannot do.
Rav, it doesn't make any sense to me because it says specifically in the Torah, it's midoraisa uvehemtecha. So
you're right.
What do you?
But it also says ata. It says you.
Yeah.
You. Well, look. At the end of the day, if you carried your child to shul, and let's say there was no eruv, there's no whatever in Rishus Harabim. Sorry, let's back it up. Let's say that there is an eruv, and you live in a community. There's an eruv and everything. I'm allowed to carry my child to shul. Let's say that this has never happened to me at all ever, but they're too big to go in a stroller. And but suddenly they oh, my legs don't work, and it's still 10 minutes of walking to go, and the child is and it's a hot day, and you're carrying them, and you're sweating, and I didn't violate anything, but I'm supposed to rest. Now, if that had happened outside an eruv, midrabanan, I could not have carried the child, but midaraisa I still could have. Now, if I had carried my 1-year-old who is not yet walking, is only crawling, then I do violate the midoraisa. But it's not about did I physically have rest? Was it burdensome? It's about did I violate? The malacha is creative work.
And there's a difference between exertion and malacha.
Right. So I don't know if you could hear that. Rich, said that there's a difference between exertion and malacha, and the same really goes for the animal. The animal is going to have to exert more if I ride on the back, undoubtedly. But if I'm inside an eruv, I'm not violating a doraisa. What do I violate? I violate a takana midirabanan. The rabbi said I'm not allowed to ride an animal, because the fear was lest I grab a branch off the tree, that's a doraisa, and then I use that to hit the animal to get it to move. That's the difference here. You're right. It says uvemtecha, but also says atah. It's the same rules that guide me, guide the animal. Okay, so we continue here in the Mishnah Berurah in Yud. He says, we're talking about only riding. The animal is pulling a wagon. And even if the wagon is higher than 10 tefachim off the ground, what's 10 tefachim have to do with this? There's no, that's right. Above 10 tefachim is called a makom ptur. So this because when we get to Chelek Dalet, you guys have already learned the Shabbos shir. So there are 4 rishuyos: Rishus Harabim, Rishus Hayachid, Carmelis. Carmelis is almost like I'll call a Rishus Harabim midrabanan, call it like that. And then there's the Makom Ptur, which is a place where no rishuyos. There are no rishuyos. It's a place of a complete exemption. And where can I find that? Well, if you can hover 10 tefachim in the air, then you are in a makom ptur. If your feet are touching the ground, it's all about where your feet are, basically, right? So if you're hovering in this wagon, you might have thought, well, the wagon is, it's obviously it's a wheel on the ground, but the ground level of the wagon, again, they have wheels. They're connected by sticks, whatever, or poles. The wagon part is above 10 tefachim. So I'm in a makom ptur. I'm not violating anything. I'll climb up on this thing, and now I'm sort of in in a free space. Exactly. I'm imagining like a game where it's like, you can't tag me over here, So he says even if the karon is higher than 10 tefachim, that's still a problem. Because at the end of the day, the animal is pulling, and therefore the animal is doing a malacha. It's pulling the wagon, at the end and so he doesn't like that. So you can't get away just because I'm riding above 10 tefachim doesn't mean that the animal is not pulling the wagon. Even if I'm a chayron sesatzmo, the wagon part is still a wagon, and he's pulling the wagon. So therefore that doesn't work. And he says, it's better to walk than to sit on the wagon. Yeshiva over al isur shimush b'balei chayim. I'm utilizing the animal if I sit there. Vegam al tchumen, and I'm also violating tchum. Tchum, why? So the principle here is that the tchum is not guided by. In my notes, note 13 if you're using over here. Because after karon gavo ma'asat tachim le'inyan dinim derabanan kagon halicha pachos kaim alan she'ein isur tchum bi adam hanim shalamal ma'asat tachim. Usually we say that yes, tchum doesn't apply, but when it talks about a space that is more than daled al daled tfachim, like a wagon, it resets what's the floor. It resets, ground level. So therefore, you really are now in a place of a tchum. Imagine it's like a little bit like a hill. If it's a daled al daled tfachim, it's a very big, wide space for me to stand or sit on, and therefore it resets the floor level. And therefore, we don't go by the ground. All right, so bottom line is, if you're in this situation, tchum would still apply with you on the wagon. So there's still a whole host of issues. The masha ain't kaning yelech b'ragla, better to just walk. Lo yavor rak al tchum, and then you're just violating tchum if you're walking because they're outside the tchum. But at least you're not using the animal and violating the animal issues. Ulevad kol ela. Now, aside from all this, if you got all that down, matzui al yidei hayeshiva b'karon lavor al yisem yachamer. Plus, if you're sitting on the wagon, there's a good fear. It's matzui. It's pretty common that what will happen. And once I'm already up there, I'm holding those things, those reins. I pull it this. Okay, now you're starting to do mechamer also. So it's too much of a temptation. But of course, all this is off the table. If you're in danger, you're running away from something, you're trying to get away from the bad guys, everything is permissible at that point.
Can I ask you a question? We're talking about two different things. We're talking about whom, we're talking about also the idea of not having to do the work on Shabbat.
Yes.
So you on the end.
Yeah.
How do you connect the two together?
Well, if you're outside of the tchum, now you're all he's doing here is we're adding another issue. Utilizing the animal on its own could be an issue.
Right.
But now, if I'm outside the tchum, I could be inside the tchum, but there's no but there's the rishus harabim. So if it's a rishus harabim, I can't utilize the animal. Today, because very rarely we have rishus harabim del Raisa. Most of our streets are Carmelists, so that's why you could build an Eruv and all this. So it's just the idea of being outside the tchum now adds just another issue, another issue really. And so every scenario that we're talking about here is so far less than ideal. Like, what do? I'm outside the tchum. I have an animal. I have a wallet. I have oy vey.
But this is also in the tchum. If you're in the tchum,
Even in the tchum, you're allowed to do these things.
So how?
Because of your adam bahul alone, because my money is at stake here.
Right. So how is the karon?
So the karon might still be an issue because no,
but if your issue is in tchum, outside the tchum, you're not allowed to do those things.
Yeah.
How is being above?
Because being above 10 tfachim, we're going to see this only. It's going to take a long time. They got a few years to get there. But being above that, being above 10 tfachim is space where any laws about carrying don't apply. Nothing happens in the avir of 10 tfachim, which is 3 feet. If you can hover in the space of 3 feet, you figure out the way. Or let's say there's going very thin here. Like, take a look. You have here. Here's a couch, but imagine that I don't know if you can see this, but you have here, right, in the bar. It's something very thin and narrow in the public space. So, if in theory I stood up on this thing, I stood here. And I decided I wanted to do a juggling act, not a problem. Anything above here, it's a whole question about in the Gemara. What happens if people imagine 2 apartment buildings, and one apartment is here or across the street, and the 2 kids have a game on Shabbos they like to play, which is there's no Eruv, there's no nothing. Can I take the ball from one window and throw it through the Rishus Harabim to the other window, and it crosses through this space? But for high up, maybe the ball is crosses through the atmosphere is in a makom ptur, meaning where the laws of Rishus, because throwing is the problem on Shabbos. If there's no Eruv there, throwing something more than a dollar almost is a problem. So, but if you're talking about throwing through the atmosphere up here on this level, or not that it started here, down here where my feet are on the ground, but the ball enters the Rishus Harabim, 100 feet in the air, and it never lands in the Rishus Harabim. So that's where above 4, this is a law that rarely applies in a very practical way to our lives. I'm just being honest, because it's hard to hover.
Right.
Like, it's not something that we could do until the hoverboards become an actual thing.
So what's the answer?
Found the buckle before you rested, right?
Yeah, that would be an interesting case, right? Yeah. So sorry, Simeon, the answer here is
No. What's the answer with the ball? If I throw the ball,
you throw it across. It's I don't want. It's a machlokas. Not surprisingly, it comes down to a principle: kluta kamisha hunchadamya, or not. Meaning, if something is collate into the it comes into this space. Is it like it was put down though? It's kamisha hunchadamya or not? Like, is it like as if it was placed down when it comes into this space? It's a machlokas. I don't remember how we passed it. So I have to hang tight. You have to hang tight
what the
2 years
Mishnah
until we get to Chelek Dalet, and then I'll answer your question for sure.
You know what the Mishnah Berurah says? It says if you could take a ball, throw it out of your window, cross a street, and enter another open window, then you can get a contract with the Yankees.
Actually, I think that's in the Bear Halacha, but anyways. Yeah.
You said if you stand up there, you are in the
Makom P'tor, yeah.
Sure.
But maybe
Why is it that if I go out to a terrace somewhere, I'm not in a Muslim front?
Because so that's why it can't be a large enough space. That's why imagine only the arm of this couch, small. If once you have something that's daled tfachim, where you have a space, now it's like a space again, where it sort of resets ground level. Right? You don't count your 10 tfachim from the ground level. So anyone's, their terrace or whatever, it's, even though, yes, it's above the ground level, imagine it's like a mountain. It's okay,
So the wagon that we discussed here, it's narrow. It's not
exactly. It has to be something. Right. So the wagon is a little tiny wagon. It's a tiny one seater, but most wagons are more than daled tfachim. That's why he says it's not going to help you.
I think a typical makom is like a threshold.
Right.
If a building has a threshold, on the street, and somebody's standing on the threshold.
Right.
And you hand something to them.
Right.
So
it's the whole. You have to find these cases in practical life.
No
right. It's a very rare circumstance of saying in a practical way to come across. I have never, dealt with any shaila remotely that has to do with questions about carrying. Certainly have come up. I've gotten those questions. That people are in a place where there's no Erev on Shabbos. They were one time somebody asked me about a place in Colorado. They were over Shabbos, and how do we do with this? No one's ever no calculation ever came to my mind of, well, you could always think about using this makom p'tor. It doesn't. It's so hard to practically apply. Anyway, so let's finish this here. This is more realistic. Okay, if anyone who ever lived in New York City, you'll see this all the time. So the Pri Megadim writes that you have to be careful when you're standing on Shabbos in a public place. There's a wagon that's empty, and there are horses that are on the back, like you see in New York City. They outlawed it. Wow, what a change for New York City. So the horses, okay, didn't know that one. I haven't been in the city in a while, I guess. What should you be careful? Don't raise your voice. Don't raise your voice. Even if it's other people's animals. Even though the wagon is empty, at the end of the day, what's it carrying? The wagon. The wagon is a burden. It's like carrying. So even if the animal is an empty wagon, you should be careful, and it's somebody else's. If I give an animal, no, move over there. Horsey, go over there. I'm not allowed to do mechamer on anybody else's animal, and so even if you're in the city, right, you're in a place that's not the middle of nowhere, still be careful. And here's where it gets interesting. I thought this was really great, because And also the wagons that are low to the ground, or that are and the days of the winter. Shekorin slitin.
That's a sled.
Almost like a sled. The end they go to sleigh. The ain gov hamasar where they're not 10 tefachim high, so it doesn't. You can't even claim makom ptor. And also, what's it say here in my definition? What is slitin? Migrora lahachlaka al panei hasheleg. What does that mean? It drags exactly to smooth, lahachlaka al panei hasheleg, to go smoothly on the. It sounds like a sled. A sleigh, not a sled. Sorry, a sleigh, right? Exactly. So they're pulling whatever, it goes right in the winter, because otherwise the wagon would get caught on the snow. So in order that the horse on his back has a sleigh to carry whoever the owner, they're not Jew, right? Who's that way they move their objects the way they want them to. But on Shabbos, I can be careful not to tell any animal move over here, because even in the winter, they might be carrying things on their back if they have a wagon or a sleigh tied to them. Take a look at Siv Gimel. Now we have to get back to more deep breath. Okay, back to some more things that maybe are not so relevant. Here we go. Siv Gimel. Hayayimo chamor v'cheresh shota v'katan. So no animal. The animal's not in this scenario anymore. It's now you. Sorry. You do have an animal. Sorry. It's you, the donkey, but now you have other choices. Not non-Jew, but a cheresh, shota, v'katan. We're all Jewish. A cheresh is a deaf mute. Okay? Let me be very clear. That cheresh is a deaf mute where there is a issue in terms of the person's. Here, the idea is always that the intellect of this person is not that of a regular person. It's much, 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 much lower. And therefore, they are considered in the category of not being a barda, fully understanding and knowledgeable, and therefore we don't hold them accountable for any mitzvos. They're patur. By definition, they are patur for mitzvos. Okay?
No.
And then you have, this is different from just being deaf. Okay? You could be deaf and be chayiv in mitzvos. Not in any mitzvah, by the way, that requires hearing. And you're patur, obviously, right off the bat. Because, onus rachmana patre. How can HaKadosh Baruch Hu hold you accountable if you're deaf? It doesn't make any sense. Here, there was an assumption that the world has changed a lot when it comes to people that are deaf in terms of understanding them. Literally, we have sign language now, but also, my understanding is that the world saw a deaf person and thought that they didn't. There's no way they had the capacity up here to understand the things that we do. They just couldn't express it, but in many ways they did. And often they didn't learn to speak either. So it's interesting. I'll just share one little anecdote. When I was in high school, or actually in middle school too, it's not like here, we're Columbus Torah Academy. It's not like Westchester Day School or whatever school here, where there's the yeshiva league. All the Jewish schools play the other Jewish schools. You never play a non-Jewish school. They only play the Jewish schools. Where I'm from, Yudafka played the private Christian schools and other private schools in the sports games. One of the schools that was in our league was the Ohio School for the Deaf. And so we would play a team that was completely comprised of deaf people. That was our opponent. And it was very interesting. It was, and of course I've met other people who are deaf as well, but they can speak. And it's not always 100% with the clarity of like the way that you and I are speaking, but they can communicate with, now it's harder for them obviously to hear, and they will communicate more easily with sign language, but they can speak, and so they can show their knowledge and intellect. That is not a cheresh, even in the times of the Gemara. Cheresh is somebody who was a mute also. They projected to the world that they know nothing. Whether it's true or not, and the understanding of what's going on in their mind, we have a much better understanding today. And again, they didn't have sign language the way we have sign language to help people that are deaf communicate with those who are not deaf, and we can understand each other. So when I talk about cheresh here, the assumption about the person is that they were of low intellect to the point that they can't understand things. That may not be any deaf person that you know. Okay? Shote is a person who is just mentally
challenged.
They are they're not aware. They're not aware of where they are. Right? In their mind. They're talking to somebody who's in that. I mean, they have a mental illness that's preventing them from understanding where they are. What is that? We all know. We've seen people who are they're yelling at people that they think that they're talking to, and there's nobody actually there. They think that they're somewhere they're not. And this kind of a person also is potter. They're not considered chayiv in mitzvos. They're potter for mitzvos. And lastly, we have a katan, who's not at all the same in that sense, but it's also they're not a vardas because of their age. That will change when they get older, but we're not holding 5, 6, 7, even until the bar mitzvah. We're not holding them accountable for mitzvahs. So what do? I have a choice here. I'm outside. I have a wallet where I'm on the road with an animal and with these people, or really one of these people. It doesn't have to be all of them. So, or remember, let's say one of all these people. What's my choice? Yanichenu ala chamor. Better to put the wallet on the back of the donkey. And don't put it on one of these. Now, when we talk about putting it on the back of the donkey, you understand I have to tell you the shtick that we talked about in Sif Beis. That's what it means to put it back on the back of the donkey. Okay, so I have to still take it off, put it on, take it off, put it on. Better than giving it to one of these. Now, why not? Why shouldn't I give it to one of them? They're potter. I'll give it to the cheresh or the shota. They'll keep following me because they, even if a person is they're unaware of where they are or their settings, they'll keep walking, near me. Why don't I just give it to them? They're potter. So he writes here, Yud Aleph, Sifkat on Yud Aleph, Shehein b'nei Adam kamoso, because they're human beings like you. And if you accustom yourself to giving it to one of these human beings, then the next time you are out on Shabbos Friday night and you were too late and you didn't make it back exactly on time, next time you're going to give it to somebody who is the bardas. You're going to give it to somebody who is mechuyev in mitzvos, and then it'll be a big problem. So rather do the whole shtick with the animal than giving it to any one of these 3 human beings, because human being you can mix it up with another human being next time who is chayiv in mitzvos. Okay.
So the question giving your 10-year-old something.
Bad chinuch. Bad chinuch when it comes to katan for sure. And he's actually going to mention that very soon. When I take the animal out of the equation, take a look at Sif Dala now. Now, what are my choices? Next scenario. Me, a cheresh, and a shota. Okay, the deaf mute and the person who is completely mentally, incompetent and unaware at all of anything. So what do? So yitnenu l'shota. Give it to the shota. Now, why? And here already you see a little bit of a hint towards that people who are deaf mutes, there was some awareness that they had some intellect. Shota is no das at all. There's no awareness. There's no understanding of what's going on, right? It's not that, by the way, you can have a shota who might be, have strong intellectual capabilities, but they think that they're in la la land, and so you can't hold a person accountable if they don't know where they don't know where they are. They don't know what their setting is. But if you gave them a challenging physics problem, they might get the answer correct, right? But they have no awareness of like where they are and what's going on. So he says better to give it to the shota because they have no das at all, and they have no knowledge at all. Take a look at cut on Yud Beis of al cheresh. Why not a cheresh? Why not give it to the cheresh? Why not say it's at least an equal opportunity? Because why data klishta isla? There is at least some low level of intellect here that is possessed by the cheresh, and therefore better to not get involved with the cheresh. I assume here because we're maybe hedging our bets that maybe there's something to be said that some of their actions do count. I remember actually that it's just coming to me right now in I think it's the third to last chapter in Yevamos called Perik Cheresh, if I'm not mistaken, and there's this assumption that a cheresh there is some level of knowledge that maybe some things are when it comes to, let's say, cheresh says hariyat mekudeshes, to a woman that may work, but then in order to absolve the marriage or something like that there's not enough of das. I don't remember the whole scenario. It's a parak that is. I don't even know how I end up. I didn't learn the parak. I learned the next 2 prakim afterwards, the Kolo, the year they learned Yevamos. But I remember that there were some cases of this related to this Same as the idea is cheresh might have something halachically that counts. So therefore, better to give it to the shota.
Rav,
Yes.
Rav, you gave a beautiful definition of how we in the 21st century look at a cheresh. And I
Yes.
thought what was very interesting, when you went from the Shulchan Aruch from the early 1500s to the Chafetz Chaim, which is the beginning of the 20th century, he starts to change and manifests a feeling of some of the real intellectual possibilities of the cheresh.
Yeah, it's true, but he's not getting that. That phrase, by the way, Daita Kalishta, is from the Gemara. That I remember that phrase vividly. And by the way, if you look at the Sharat Tzion, the source for that idea is the Gemara. He says, "Well, in Sharat Tzion Yudalim." So the Gemara already had an awareness of it. I'll just read you one thing I have in one of my notes here that relates to people that were deaf. If you're looking at 16 on the side over there, he says that, and this is a challenging thing because the post-scheme of the 20th century we're dealing with the new understanding that people that are deaf, many of them are quite brilliant, right? It has nothing to do with that they lost their hearing, or that they were born with the ability to hear. He writes in this note here, 16. You don't have it on your page, Simeon, but just listen to this. Let's say you have a deaf person who's a brilliant scholar. So Kospa B'Shalos the Chuos Igros Moshe. So what did Rabbi Moshe Feinstein write about this? He says, Shigzeros HaKosov. He says, look, I can't change the law. Shigzeros HaKosov Hachshivo Kamisha Eno Bendas. Rabbi Moshe felt that there was nothing I could do to change it. It's Shigzeros HaKosov. It's like a Kodesh Baruch Hu made a Gzera. That a Cheresh is not a Bendas, so they're not Chayav Mitzvos. Now that's hard. V'chein Kosov HaGon of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Shlomo Zalman also wrote something like this. He says here. Ubi'er, and he explained since they don't hear or speak. Again, cheresh is a deaf mute. You have to have both. Okay? You can't hold them accountable for their actions because they can't speak and they can't hear. So how are they getting information? You can't hold if a person doesn't know because they can't hear, they can't say something to ask a question. How can you hold them accountable? Hosifo, and he adds, which is something that was new. Shlomo says now they're able to sign and they can write, right? It's not like dibur, and therefore so I'm just telling you that even the poskim who understood a lot of the things that related to communication for deaf people that were deaf, for deaf mute, even Rav Moshe and Rav Shlomo Zalman didn't hold that there was a change of status. And he said the next part here, that if you look in that note, the cheresh yochol ledaber, if it's a cheresh who can speak. Again, and I'll even add here, that's not clear. There's always, again, when we would play the school OSD, Ohio School for the Deaf, and they would say good game to us, it wouldn't come out, with the clarity again that I'm speaking with. But I knew what they were saying. Right, and even though they were deaf, and they would say to me after the game, and by the way, they were the sweetest school, right? They would say good game, but it wasn't like a clear sentence. They spoke with they didn't know because they couldn't hear themselves, right? The cheresh yachol ledaber beofen sheyuvnu ledvarav the rov ha'anashim, so that most people can understand what they're saying. Then Rav Moshe says, Dino kebendas, that person is not the cheresh, even if it's not clarity. There's not clarity of speech. But they are communicating in a way that there's enough clarity that most people can understand what they're saying. Then they're bendas. They're bendas. And then Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach also agrees with that. So it's interesting, though, because we know that probably some people who are even deaf mute, some of them might be they might have excellent intellect, and they can communicate with sign language perfectly, but they're not able to speak or hear. They can't hear, or then they're not able to speak. Part of by the way, the speaking might relate to how they were, brought up, right? If they were in a home where other people, the eating, also depends when did their their deafness, if they were born deaf, and and was there an attempt to try to train them at being able to communicate? Again, I'm not an expert on all these things, but anyways, I think we understand a lot more about people that are deaf, and that's why Rav Shlomo Zalman and Rav Moshe are struggling with it. But they say, look, what are we going to do? Gzeras HaKosov. Okay. Anyways. Co-clear, by the way, is a game changer. By the way, as Richie brings up there are people. I remember living in the Heights, and there was someone who in the Mount Sinai Jewish Center where I davened, who had cochlear implants, and he was able to hear. It gives the ability to somebody who's deaf. They can now hear. It's a game changer, and to me, they're not. You can't say this person's a cheresh. They can hear, and that's because it's a cochlear implant. It's amazing what we've been able to do to help people along. I would wonder if I asked. I never asked this question, but if I asked, some poskim today, even from the time of Moshe passed away or Shlomo Zalman Auerbach passed away, so much has changed. And I wonder if I went and asked this question to Rav Herschel Schechter or to some of the Gedolim of Gedolei poskim today, I wonder if the answer might be different. I have no idea, but I wonder if it would be different. Maybe I should ask the question also to my Rebbe, just to find out where some of the poskim are. Anyways, let's go to Hey. Shota v'katan. What time is it? Oh, let's finish this, then we'll stop. Shota v'katan yitnenu l'shota. If I have a shota and a katan with me now, so that's my choices are shota and a katan. Yitnenu l'shota. Shakatan yachol yavol l'chlal das. Why? Well, the katan is a little kid, 5 years old. They don't know what's going on. Carry, not carry. I don't even know it's Shabbos. So better to give it to the shota, because at some point the kid will become mechuyev in it. So be like, hey, Dad, I remember that one time you gave me the thing to carry, on that weird time when we got caught outside. Well, they might remember Dafka because you were in a weird circumstance. They might remember, and they might think also they might make mistakes in terms of their own, observance of Shabbos. So better to give it to the shota than give it to the katan. And if you're in a case of cheresh the katan, what about in the case of the cheresh the katan? Yitnenu l'mishi yirtzeh. Dealer's choice. No one is better than the other. No, it's better that you don't do it. It's interesting here. You are not allowed usually to tell your child to do something wrong that you can't do. It's the Torah. You want to say uvehem techa. It says ata uvincha uvitecha, right? So to tell your child to do something wrong is a problem. In fact, they even say here where is this? Somebody I read somewhere. Where was this? Oh, it was the. If you look at the Be'er Halacha, Yitnenu l'mishi yirtzeh kasav prima gadim. It's on the side, on the Be'er Halacha upside. Yira eli v'hainu dafka k'she'eno b'no. If it's not your child, then you can have that calculation. But aval b'no katan shu bar chinuch midrabanan. But if it's your child, you have an obligation midrabanan for chinuch. So midrabanan better. So then, therefore, Yitnenu l'cheresh. So better to give it to the cheresh then, right? When we stop Eksham the Efshar, what if it's your child who's the cheresh or the shota? So then she'ena bar chinuch kamo katan. It's a whole question that because they're not they're like a katan that you can't educate them, right? It's even if you have a grown, it sounds like a bar mitzvah child. I don't know, something like that. It's unclear then, whatever. So there's a complicated situation. Let's take a look at Mishnah Berurah here very quickly. Lemishi yirtzeh dechol echad yesh lo ma'ala b'fnei atzmo b'chanis ka'al. You can make the case on either one when it's a katan or a cheresh, because cheresh is a daita klishta. There's some level of knowledge there. Katan doesn't, but the katan will grow up one day and be a bardas. Maybe you have a mitzvah of chinuch with the child. So it's a toss up. I would probably actually not give it to the katan, because if it's on Shabbos, you enabling the katan to do something, you doing that is a whole halachic parsha that you really shouldn't do. That's why I've told you many times you should not take your child and hold them up to the light switch and say flip the switch. That it's not better than you doing it. And therefore, you should rather do a shinui if it's some situation where we've talked about. So here, I don't like it, and I think that he's going to talk about it here. When he talks about it, where did I see? Somebody wrote about this, that at least if it's the child, you should do with the child. Oh, it's in your dollar. It's the next Mishnah Berurah. We'll see next week that. But if you're going to give it to the child, give it to the child before Shabbos starts. Because then the child, it didn't take this item, on Shabbos with my. I'm not supposed to say my achila b'yadayim. I'm not allowed to. Katan is not a chayav mitzvos. Can I feed them pork? No, I can't take pork and put it down their throats. That's problematic. Same thing. I'm not allowed to on Shabbos when the Isser is intact. I can't give it to them. We'll talk about that more next week. Okay, amazing. Oh, it's the parade. Oh yeah, the parade. Forget it. The parade's not. In 2 weeks from now, we'll continue, right? So the parade next week. Okay, we all should come out to the parades after this year. There's gonna be a lot of protesters probably against, so we need a lot of people pro. Anyway, so we'll continue that next time, and then it gets into the more realistic scenario, which is what if you're by yourself and Shabbat starts in the middle of nowhere? That is the most realistic. All the other ones, yeah. So you have a non-Jew with you. That's like ideal. The most realistic scenario is that you're going to be by yourself. And now, how do you deal with that scenario? And there's the Gemara. The Gemara has an answer. He will quote here, and then we'll from there we'll finish up the last few seifim, and yeah, we're getting close to the end here. Okay, very good. Shkoyach. Okay.
Rabbi, so beautiful. Thank you so much.
you.
Yeshikoach.
Yes, Steve.
On some bus.
Yeah.
And the bus driver was having an argument with some woman on the bus, and the bus driver, it was a Hamura, right? Hamura,
Oh gosh.
And from the back of the bus comes Hamura Ela Aton.
For female donkey is Aton. Yeah, there are a lot of people who on the road like to call each other that name in Israel. Yeah. So yeah. But anyways, this is our interesting simanim of different halachic principles at play. Okay. Take care. Have a good day, everybody. Good day.
Thank you, Rev.
Oh, yeah.